Human Resources Employees. What are your best HR nightmare stories? I am on the HR team that supports a wide variety of U.S. cities for our company, including our colorful Florida locations. This is the best story I heard. We had some woman trying to avoid doing work by sitting out in her car in the parking lot. While she was hiding out there, she needed to use the restroom. Well, instead of going back inside, or doing literally anything else, she decides to pee out her car window. Even though I am also a woman, I was impressed and disgusted by the physics behind this feat. She had stuck her bare ass outside the window and just went for it. Unbeknownst to her, her male co-worker had arrived at work late due to an appointment. He drove past to find a parking spot as this was happening, and got full view. He then reported the incident to us. One of our HR people had to investigate this, and sure enough, parking lot cameras could corroborate his story. Our HR person confronted the woman. Her response, "Well, how did he know it was me? It could have been anyone." We thought, okay, fair enough. The cameras aren't CSI grade zoom, so we only saw the ass part. It was harder to completely identify the face. So we went back to the male peer and asked how he knew it was her. His response? Oh, it was definitely her. The face tattoos are pretty recognizable. We definitely don't get paid enough for this. Not in HR, but my previous senior manager was renowned for sleeping with colleagues. He was married with kids. Before I started there, I remember seeing a huge banner plastered across a footbridge that everyone leaving work by car had to drive under to get to the motorway. The sign said, "Joe Blogs, not actual name, cheating bastard." Turns out he was cheating on his wife with a team leader from another department, and was cheating on his mistress with another team leader from yet another department. Both the team leaders found out about each other and had a massive fight in the reception of the building. By the time I started at the company, both of the team leaders were no longer working there. I had one employee submit a form to increase her own salary. She also forged her manager's signature. Like, for real? My friend was doing hiring for a staffing agency during college. A guy who we went to high school came in looking for a job. He told the candidate that he had two jobs. One paid 10 an hour and the other paid 11. The only thing was that the 11 an hour job requires a drug test. And if you fail the drug test, you can't get either. He said that he wanted the 11 an hour job. Now we knew him well enough to know that he liked smoking. So my friend reiterated the drug test fail rule. Dude said he was good on Friday to take the test Monday. Come Monday he took the drug test. Pissed hot for weed, cocaine, amphetamines, and some other shit that gets out of your system in 48 HRS. I work in recruitment, so not exactly HR. A guy had applied for a job that required a DBS check, police check. He filled the DBS and all his other checks flew through. The DBS came back as he had committed a crime in the past. Now on our end, only the guy who will be applicant's manager and a senior in our department can see the DBS result. He called the department unhappy the job had been withdrawn. He then sent a long email in begging for another chance. He said when he was 17 he beat two women up, then threatened the cops with a gun. We're in the UK, so guns are pretty rare, especially in the 1970s. He went into detail about the attempted rape. This dude wanted a job in a hospital. It's a no, mate. there was a dude in our other facility that was going around and wiping their ass and shoving the shit back up into the toilet paper dispenser so that when the next person goes to reach. Came into work early for a morning shift, work in an industrial lab. Heard noises from the back corner of the office portion of the building but can't make out what they are because of distortion. Head that way to see what was going on as I was the only one there, so I thought, at 3 a.m. See my lab manager fucking the district manager, her boss, while the HR rep for the district is sitting there, enjoying the view. I noped and went to the lab and tried to forget what happened. The workers had races with those motorized forklifts. One did not know that there was freshly poured concrete. Got the forklift stuck in it. Damage was €100,000. Big foundation for a new storage facility. According to the union contracts, such damages are paid for by the company unless it was intentionally done. Walked into my boss's office, told him about the situation. Okay Shadavi, can you please return to your office for a while? Okay. As soon as I was at my desk, I heard the loudest Gottverdammte Scheiß from his office. Then my phone rang, and he told me to inform the insurance, which ended up paying less than 10K of the damage. Otherwise, the usual HR nightmare is just people not keeping their documents in order. Saw a guy blatantly lie in his recruitment form, watching him fill it out in front of me. It was total bollocks. Apparently he was 15th in line to the throne, went to Eton, studied at Oxford and served in the army for 9 years after training at Sandhurst. Not bad for a 21-year-old. Who had in fact spent 3 years in a young offenders institute, battling a drug problem. I was asked to translate for some visitors from the parent company at a celebration held by HR. I stopped translating around the time the director of HR started asking overly personal, sexual questions to the 2 young HR office ladies. A couple days later, during a private bullshit session, I recounted the story to a friend who happened to be a director from the parent company. He put on his professional hat and asked me to write it up and submit a complaint to the parent company's HR. Nightmare ensued. Local head of HR had been in charge of the sexual harassment avoidance training that had narrowly saved them from lawsuit. CEO of local company insisted that I bring the story out in public and talk to the director of HR like an adult. Parent company HR brought in HR from another local subsidiary to perform an investigation. It became painfully obvious who the whistleblower was. Nothing came of the investigation that I heard about, but the next year was made to be a living hell for me by the local company. Even the office lady who had been the subject of the sexy inquisition resented the fact that she was in the center of a controversy. I left that company as soon as I possibly could and was not saddened to hear of their bankruptcy and partition a couple of years later. They had other issues as well. Dr. got harassed out of my job by HR after reporting HR director for sexual harassment. Once upon a time I was an HR manager. This is my worst story. Once I had a dude who looked great on paper for a mid-level role at the large non-profit I worked for. We were a houselessness and addiction rehab shelter. Easily the type of resume for our operations department which made us all think, oh, this guy looks good. He could be management material someday with these type of credentials. I phone interviewed him and thought, oh yeah, the team's gonna love him. We set up an in-person interview. I wasn't able to sit in on the in-person interview, so the director of that department and his best/longest standing employee did it. Apparently when the guy first showed up and was asked if he'd like anything to drink, he asked for a bourbon on the rocks. Kidding, and everything went downhill from there. According to the department director and the other employee, the interview went immediately terrible and the guy kept floating things like, "But I bet you're not going to hire me because of .. They felt like every answer from the guy and every question was meant to be some sort of verbal trap he was laying, so they cut it pretty short. Later, the guy called me back directly. He had my office hashtag because I had used it to phone interview him, and left a VM. He started by saying essentially, "Thank you for the opportunity, but I really didn't appreciate how you guys clearly didn't want to hire me because I'm a male / I'm too old / I'm a father / I have a chronic medical issue / I was an alcoholic 10 plus years ago / I was once homeless / etc. etc. All of these are verbal traps, and I am 100% sure he was trying to trap us so he could disparage the organization and sue us. I can say definitively that none of these were true. We weren't thinking of any of these things, and we were damn near ready to hire him before the interview had he done as well as he did on paper and in the phone interview. The only reason we didn't hire him was because he was clearly a malicious psychopath, and it was pretty clear he wanted the organization's money but had no intention of doing any real work, besides an hour of interviewing, to get it. I had to bring the issue up with our CEO and CFO, and we drafted a very clear statement in return, which I left by voicemail and email. Dear Mr. ______, thank you for the opportunity to interview you. In response to your prior communication, we feel it very important to clarify that we have not yet decided on a final candidate for this role, and as we discussed in both your phone interview and your in-person interview, the only consideration we will make when deciding on a final candidate is whether one's professional qualifications match the needs of this role. Thank you for your time. We will keep you informed on our final decision. Sincerely. F that guy. 1. I had a bookkeeper that paid himself 2 checks every week. We did not catch it for a year. 2. Another bookkeeper quit and files for unemployment. He then claimed a claim with the EEOC that he had a disability and we failed to make accommodations for him. The disability was alcoholism, and the accommodations were leaving early to attend AA meetings. Seriously, we had to hire a lawyer to fight that. 3. A guy I hired hurt himself on the first hour of the first day of work. He claimed he fell and hit his head on the wall. He was out for weeks on workman's comp from the concussion. Then when he came back on light duty, he could only do desk work but managed to fall again in the bathroom and hit his head again. It took me 9 months to get rid of him. It turns out this was not his first rodeo. When I called his former employer, the lady I spoke to made an offhand comment about workplace accidents and head injuries and the importance of cameras in the workplace. 4. While doing a remodel of a museum, one of my employees helped himself to a gun that was on display. It was very ugly and embarrassing for everyone. My company was kicked off the job and banned from ever working for them again. I fired the guy and he filed a discrimination claim with the EEOC because I did not fire the whole crew, just him. I got more. I was sitting in the HR office with one of the members of HR. I was waiting on her to finish a form so that we could go eat lunch. Suddenly, this guy comes in. He was a young temp employee and had only been there a week or so, and says he has something he needs to talk about. I start to get up to leave when he blurts out that he doesn't like that fact that there are so many gays and lesbians working in the company. Once he says that, I sit right back down. The HR employee asks him to clarify, and he goes on about how his trainer was gay and his team lead is gay and his manager is a lesbian, all true, and he doesn't feel comfortable working around all these gays and lesbians. The HR employee asks him if anyone has ever sexually harassed him, which he says they haven't. She then says, "So you want me to fire these employees, strictly based on their sexual orientation, just so you don't feel uncomfortable?" He says yes, after which she tells him to leave the office. She then calls in his manager and talks with her about it. He ends up quitting by the end of the week. My friend who worked in HR told me about her old job where the boss had drilled a hole from his office through to the ladies' changing rooms and was perp-whacking it every chance he could get. They found out because someone saw the light through the hole as he took the cover off for a peek. He denied everything and they had to take a DNA sample from the carpet under the hole, which confirmed it was him, and B, that he had indeed been whacking away. Manufacturing, long story short, the company uses some pretty dangerous equipment and machines. The manufacturing floor and warehouse had started to have some safety issues, so they decided to start doing random drug tests. 60% failed, including the best friend of the owner. This same person was responsible for several of the safety issues mentioned above and was directly responsible for 2 people being injured while on the job due to negligence on his part. So what did HR do? Nothing. The owner was one of the people that failed. My job is a constant HR nightmare. Boss has slept with coworker A. Coworker A is married to coworker B. Coworker B and they have been married, unhappily, for 10 years or something now. B has no idea, even though B invites boss over for dinner once every other week. Boss is now dating new coworker, my best friend LOL, and has already gifted her $2,000. Despite another co-worker suffering from cancer and barely being able to pay the bills when he was still working. My other boss, who owns other lesser half of company, has called me a narcissist in a meeting, told me literally there are no such things as business ethics. That's barely the past couple months, been there for 4 years. Sorry, not HR, we don't have one. Edit. Got tons more stories if interested, but heading off to work now actually. I don't work in HR, but I do have a nightmare HR story. When I was on my gap year, I worked a part-time job as a fitness instructor at a leisure center. One of my co-workers, call him Bill, was a nice guy and I would often sit and chat to him on my breaks, etc. Long-term GF and baby at home. As part of my job, I used to teach spinning classes on a fairly regular basis. I would normally leave my phone in the staff room while I was teaching, or behind the reception desk. Both these places were secure and my phone had a passcode on it. I didn't want it going off while I was teaching because when it received calls/texts it interfered with the stereo in the spin studio. I didn't have a locker or anything where I could store it. Sometime in around January I was at uni for an interview weekend. My girlfriend at the time had come to pick me up, and while she was waiting in the car, she was scrolling through my messages on my iPad. When I got in the car, she showed me one of my chats and said, "Why did you send this video to Bill?" I had no recollection of sending any videos to Bill, since I did not speak to him outside of work beyond "I'm going to be late" or similar. I thought it was a mistake, but as I scrolled further back up I saw that I had sent this same video to Bill a couple of weeks prior. Feeling thoroughly perplexed, I clicked into the video and saw it was a video of me, 20F, and my girlfriend, 26F, on holiday in Thailand. I'd like to stress that it was not a sexual video. We were just joking around, but we had just got out the shower and were both naked. At this point I'm still thinking it's some kind of big mistake, as Bill is a nice guy with a baby at home. However, I look a little closer and realize that the date/times of when I had sent these videos was at times I was teaching spin classes and therefore had left my phone unattended. Bill, being the sicko he was, had obviously seen me put my passcode into my phone during all the times we had been sat chatting on breaks etc. and had memorized it. He had then taken the opportunity to scroll through all my personal photos and videos when I had left my phone unattended to go and teach classes. I'm assuming that he had deleted the video once, hence why he had sent it to himself again a couple of weeks later. He'd also deleted the chat history from my iPhone but hadn't realized it synced to my iPad. This was in around 2012 BTW. I would only have been about 18-19 at the time when the videos were taken. Obviously I reported this to my manager and to HR, but it was a bit of a minefield for them to navigate. I don't know what he told them, but I imagine it was along the lines of saying I sent them to him of my own free will. How would he have known my password etc.? It took a long while to get sorted, but in the end he did get sacked, thankfully. The police also paid him a visit, so I'm sure he had some explaining to do to his so. I had a friend working a GM when HR thought it was a good idea to test everyone on the skill set needed for their department regardless of how long they were in their position. Long careers, 15, 20, 25 years, were ruined because even though they worked there for a long time with a long string of great performance reviews, they didn't pass the test that measured what HR thought was required for the department. Say you're a materials expert working in a design department. You may know barely enough in the CAD system to draw a cylinder. On the other hand, given a cylinder, you can whip out all the properties that cylinder would have if it were made from aluminum, cold rolled steel, fiberglass etc. You'd be out of your job because HR said you had to have a certain level of CAD expertise even if it wasn't relevant to your role in the design process. I used to work in human services. We would go on night rounds to ensure that our graveyard shift healthcare providers were awake. Our company served people in residential homes versus a traditional facility, so we'd drive around in groups of 2 or 3 and stop by unannounced to houses. Pull up to a driveway and there's 2 cars parked there, only one employee should be there at this time. Pull out keys, open the door, walk inside and see no one. There's a second floor to the house, so I head up there. No one in the room, but there's a light on in the closet. Open closet to see employee plus random man totally nude and having sex. I close the door, ask the employee to get dressed and please leave the residence. While they're both getting dressed, guy hits his head on a coat rack in the closet and manages to knock himself out cold. Now I have our employee screaming half naked in a closet with a passed out guy. Call 911, ambulance picks up the guy, let the employee leave after firing them on the spot. Someone has to stay overnight with the clients, so I stay there to finish off that shift for another 4 to 5 hours. 2 hours later 3 cars pull up on the street and 5 to 6 guys start walking towards the house, see them through the front window. I begin to panic as they look very menacing and like they're going to hurt someone. All the doors are locked and I go into our client's bedroom and lock their door. Knock at the door, followed by these guys tearing up / breaking stuff on the outside of the house. Call 911 again and they show up within like 5 minutes. Police arrest all these dudes and I learned that they received a couple tips about someone operating as a prostitute from our client's residence. I finish up the shift and have to go back into the office at 8:30 a.m. and explain all of this to the company owner. Have to share both police reports with the client's guardian. No one blames me for what happened, but everyone is super disappointed of course. Icing on the cake, guess who filed for unemployment? My company used to give branded gifts to our clients. One employee volunteered to drive one about an hour away, and he took another employee with him. What he didn't tell anyone is that he didn't have a license, his car was unregistered, and his brakes were bad. So inevitably his brakes failed while trying to stop at an intersection, and he totaled his car. Thankfully no one was seriously hurt, but he got into trouble when the cops came.